Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to make this out of this. It can be very frustrating and you could spend a lot of time doing this, so I'm going to show you today a couple of tricks that's really going to help you. First thing you need to do is decide how thick you want your tiny little strap to be. I'm going to use this for a lace-up on a dress. This is 3/8 of an inch wide, and that is a good width to have in a nice sturdy lace-up. If you want it thinner, just prepare for more frustration. To do that, I'm going to cut a piece of fabric 1 1/4 inches wide, and I'm going to do it with a rotary cutter and a mat so that it's just perfect. Right, let's take it to the sewing machine. Right sides together. We're going to sew this with a very narrow seam allowance. The seam allowance needs to be thinner than the width of our strap. So if we look at this, I'm at almost 5/8. So I'm going to sew 1/4 inch in on my sewing machine, which I know is right about at the edge of my presser foot. I'm going to use a tool to turn this inside out. I'm going to show you a different way to do it if you don't have my tool. But either way, the seam allowance needs to be trimmed to about 1/8 of an inch. And on a mat with a rotary cutter, it's the best way to do it. You're wondering why this is twisting. I know why this is twisting. I sewed this on a scrap piece of fabric that happens to be on the bias. Now, it's not ideal to make a strap on the bias. Why? Because it will stretch. It will stretch just a little. But I don't have a choice with this because this fabric absolutely matches the wedding dress lace-up, and I don't have any other fabric. So we're just going to have to make do. Okay, now I'm going to use my tool to turn this inside out. I found this tool in an old bin of stuff that I purchased from a lady who sewed for years. So I honestly don't know if these are still available. I'll check to see before I post this. All right, to see if it's available. But it has a little bit of a hook. It has a twisty wire hook that I'm going to put inside of this fabric right here. It's going to go inside of there like that, and then I'm going to pull it inside out. In order to help that happen, I'm going to clip this off right here. And this right here is saving me many hours of frustration and a lot of bad words in my head. Alright, I just let go. Just let go of... And so we're going to have to do it again. Actually, it's stuck in there. It's allowing me to just pull it through. So it accomplished the task even though my hook slipped out. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to do this with a piece of string. What we're going to do is use this string to turn it inside out, but you have to think about it before you sew it. We're going to put this yarn in here, sew it in securely, and then sew down at the 1/4 inch seam allowance to turn it. The only downside to doing it with this big fat piece of yarn is that my presser foot wants to slide off of that because it's kind of bumpy. So a better thing to do would be to find the skinniest, strongest cord or yarn that you can find to do this project. Alright, let's see if this will turn. But you can't turn it all at once. Before I turn this, I'm going to go trim off as much of that seam allowance as I can. It'll make it easier. If you take a look, my seam allowance is at least 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to see if I can turn this with that a little bit of a heavier seam allowance on it. Trying to get this first part started, sink that part into itself, I think it'll go. It's just that this is the very tough part. There we go. Okay. Now that it's going inside out, I'm just going to make sure it doesn't bunch up at the end, and that it's got like a clear feed path. Okay, so I got it too bunched up right there. It's gotta be a little bit loose up at the top. And then it starts to come out the other end, and it's a lot easier to pull and just let that come out. Except for it'll get bunched up because you're in a hurry to get this out. But you don't want to get it bunched up there. There we go. I'm using this for a lace-up. It's 3/8 inch wide, and that worked well. I didn't think it was going to work that well because of the excess seam allowance, but it worked well. I'm going to stitch this out of the end and have this length to work with.